fun part. Questions? And where are the mics? You have the mic?
I'll get one.
Alrighty. So, from the audience, we've heard from the Department of Human Services, Department of Education, ITEMA, Housing Finance Authority, Department of Labor, and Department of Public Works. I'm sure some of you have questions with regard to being transportation or education for the parents, so we'll leave it up to you to get the ball rolling. One thing I want to echo, which was very true that Mr. Lewis brought up, Ms. Lockhart brought up, is data. One of the very, very disturbing things is that after the 2010 census, we have yet to get data on the number of persons with disabilities in the Virgin Islands. I've, within the last year, being in contact with the ADA Northeast Center, they got data on Puerto Rico in last year, and we still have yet to get, unless Mr. Finch can address it.
No, and I was just going to say, I mean, you're correct in that it's been very difficult to get information from the 2010 census period. It's been very slow in coming.
And so we have yet to get numbers on the number of persons in the Virgin Islands with disabilities. I know, although they were on the questions in the form, one of the few years I think I filled out my own census, but I know, I know they were there on that form. Yes, Ms. Cardi wants to get the ball rolling?
Yeah, I wanted to
Okay. Here it's coming.
Pleasant good afternoon to the panelists. We're very happy to have you here today. I would like to get the ball rolling with starting with Mr. Finch. First of all, I would like to, while you were speaking and you mentioned about people who went to college through through Human Services Vocational Rehab, I put up my hand, well, not to interrupt the speech, but just to say I am a product of Voc Rehab. I went to college and worked with Voc Rehab, and so it's a very good program.
Thank you.
Okay, the question that I have now, this morning we were talking about the ADA compliance, accessibility, and so on and so forth. What I wanted to find out is the Department of Human Services in all the areas, if you are totally ADA compliant, Human Services.
No, I believe. Since we're in St. Thomas, I think I could say yes, and just hope none of y'all ever go to St. Croix. I'm trying to think of, and someone may know of somewhere in St. Thomas where we are not, but I think we're much better off here than we are in St. Croix. Now in St. Croix, we are looking at some changes, and a lot of issues, a lot of just building issues have been just greatly delayed because there's just been no money available, and it's just decision to put money in services rather than in buildings.
And as you also have to remember, especially with government, even though it's accessibility goes through program accessibility as well as architectural accessibility. So sometimes where there's not architectural accessibility, as long as the program is made accessible to you through delivery of services, coming out and helping filling out the application, the government is still in compliance with the law.
Mr. Jennings, I think that you're correct. Actually, there is a evaluation and transition plan that each department has to comply with, and that it also includes, as you mentioned, programs, services, activities, communication, architectural barriers, website compliance, and employment. So each agency within the Virgin Islands government has to complete this evaluation process as a part of that process for ADA compliance. So that's in the process.
Thank you. And next question? It's on.
Hi again, Rosie Francis, Department of Education. I'm an RN. Also, I happen to have a son who is developmentally challenged, and my question is aimed at special ed in a way. My son now is 28, just as a back stuff. I got him to go. I found a place after many, many years, and he's in Connecticut doing a skill building, vocational training place in New Haven that's allowing him to develop independent skills, which is something we've sort of fought for here, and I don't really still see it going on. But for special ed, I have a question for special ed. When you have children that need services, they're not totally vetted yet as saying that, okay, you guys are really going to get it, but they need services, i.e., there's some children who need to have someone helping them if they're blind, get around campus. You don't always have those persons available. How, and then you talk about funding and funding not always being there. How do you expect the children to really get what they need when half the time you can't find the support services? I mean, honest to God, I'm there. I see it every day. They need those services and they're not getting it. And even children who are going through the process, and the process takes too long. I mean, I'm in elementary school and I have children we identify from day one that they come in. And they may not get processed until the end of the year. And then they may not, quote unquote, meet the criteria, which is ridiculous, and then the child is really suffering in the school system. The young lady that spoke earlier today, she made it sound like the school system that she happened to be in, the district that she was in, was very positive in their approach towards making sure that persons with all kinds of disabilities were their challenges were being met in a very broad way of thinking. And so how can we get there without all of the dialogue that we hear and we never see it? And we're working with it every day, and it's very, very frustrating for the teachers, the parents, and most definitely the children who are the ones that then end up on the street. And you've heard me say that many times. Sorry about that.
That's a very long question, but I'll try to put it all together for you. First of all, the Division of Special Education has been going through a series of changes. So if you notice, leadership has changed a number of times within the past few years. So for me and for my leadership here within the division, my focus is to help students to become as independent as possible. And a lot of these things we cannot, it's difficult to do as a department, through the Department of Education alone. We have to tie in with other community services. We have teachers now on staff that help our students who are visually impaired with learning how to braille, learning to getting their academics transition within the classroom, so that they could become independent learners, as well as orientation and mobility being provided at their school sites so that they can learn to be independent at their school sites, and then as they mature and they get older, that they get oriented within their community. So that's something that we have available now. With regards to having our students have access to other ways to become independent, a lot of the partnerships we're in the process of establishing at this point in time, so that we can have our students have a natural progression or easy transitions from one level to the other. With regards to the evaluation process, we get flooded with stuff from from within the school year, and we have a small team of people working throughout the year to get all the evaluations completed. With regards to eligibility, there is a set line that we follow, that we have to follow whether a child becomes eligible for special ed or not, and then that is an area when the children are so close to the line and they don't make it, they don't qualify. That's a difficult area. I personally call it the gray area kids. You know, where they're not high enough to be with a group of their peers, you know, function with a group of their peers, and they're not low enough to qualify for special ed. That's a very, very difficult demographic. And the best we can do with those children at this time is to help them provide some limited support along with our special ed population at the school sites. So unfortunately for those kids, we still have to see how we can help them to become more successful, you know, just, you know, being on the edge and just tying into our services that we provide at the school. But overall eligibility, we're just working on getting them in and, you know, getting them in the system as quickly and as efficiently as possible. So a timeline, I can't provide a timeline for that at this time, but we have a small group of people that are working on it. That I can assure you.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to add and talk a little bit more about something that I had mentioned earlier in just children with autism, just as one sort of corner of the population, because I think though there are lessons in that for what we tend to do over and over again. We don't have a lot of preventive services. We don't have a lot of early intervention services. And it's only until someone gets to be either significantly enough of a problem or that their parents and loved ones have enough moxie to really work the system that they then tend to get the most intensive services and they get sent away because those services aren't available here. So when we look at what we're spending a huge amount of money on the issue or on that particular disability, but it's only for a couple of people. And our money is probably better spent if we can reverse that and we can do programs locally. So if we, for example, could start serving children who have autism within the territory, even the residential piece within the territory, if you have a residential program established locally, then you can do respite care. You can have parents have weekends off, have evenings off, be able to go on a vacation, whatever enables families to hold on to their child longer. Then you can start doing outreach programs. You can start doing parent education programs. Human services and the schools would have to work together for the schools that, to be able to handle children better in the classrooms. But until we kind of go towards we're never going to be able to provide everything locally, but it has to be a goal to do as much as we can, just because of all the major advantages that we get from when we do a program locally and all the extra programs that we can then add to it.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Finch. Also, Ms. Griffith, we missed the young lady this morning, but she mentioned a program where from grade school on, I believe, she was buddied up. She's visually impaired, graduate now of Harvard, but she was buddied up with another student, and I think I saw that a long time ago in Ohio as well. That she went to school in California. But that's something maybe that can be considered, because essentially that made her more independent within the school setting as well. Yes, there's Mr. Olive.
Good afternoon. This question is for the Department of Public Work, Ms. Turner. Ms. Turner, my first question, I have actually two questions. My first question is, why are we lacking transportation for senior citizens and for the disabled, especially to certain areas in the Virgin Islands? I'm not only talking in particular in St. Thomas, talking about St. Croix and also St. John. My second question is, I noticed, and I've experienced this on my own, the crosswalks are very thin. It's very hard for a driver to see the crosswalk. I've been almost knocked down right there in front of the hospital. And I would like to make suggestions that we should have traffic lights, including walk signals, especially for the blind, speakers on the side so that they could hear when they could walk or cannot walk on the crosswalk. My other question to the panel, the public needs to be aware of exactly how it is to be a senior citizen and disabled. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Olive. To answer your first question about you said that there was a lacking of transportation for the senior community. I know if the commissioner was here, he would have been very proud to report that we're expecting 23 or 25 buses territory-wide. We do recognize that there is a limitation. We have an aging fleet of buses. A lot of them are out of commission or have outgrown their service life. And it has been a challenge of the Department of Public Works to actually purchase buses and get them here locally, because we, as you know, we drive on the left-hand side, and most of the bus manufacturers that manufacture buses on the mainland, they manufacture buses for driving on the right-hand side. So there was quite a challenge for the department to identify a vendor that would be able to manufacture buses for our territory. It's a small scale compared to what the orders that they usually get on the mainland. But in the next couple of months, the commissioner would have been very happy to report that we will be getting an increased, probably a triple or even quadruple amount of buses that we currently have. You also talked about the striping of the crosswalks. That as well has been a challenge for the Department of Public Works. The commissioner, when he came into the department, he purchased 2 striping machines, one for the island of St. Thomas, St. John, and one for St. Croix. And unfortunately, I'm not sure if you remember, there was a fire at our facility in the sub-base area, and the striping machine was damaged in that fire. So we are working with the insurance company to get the money back to repurchase a striping machine. So what we have to do right now is to go out to a contractor when we do get funding to have a contractor come and actually stripe the crosswalk. But we do recognize that there is a hazard where you can't actually see the striping, but we're trying to address that by getting a contractor. Right now, we know that he's actively striping a lot of the school zone areas, and then once he's completed the school zone areas, whatever additional funding, I think he identified the hospital, that's something that we could kind of look into.
Speaking of transportation, I got an announcement. All those who were riding with Dial-A-Ride, they asked me to announce that the bus is here, and you may have to catch your ride right now.
Oh. Hello.
Mr.
Yeah.
O'Neill? Mr.
My
O'Neill?
name- Yeah, my name is Rita Call, and I don't live very far from the waterfront. And I was thinking on planning, Mr. Lewis, you were telling us about the plan. I've seen a lot of the tsunami signs, and what we are expecting perhaps. I'm thinking we who live on that waterfront, let's take Lucinda Millen for instance. What does happen? What kind of plans do we have if we do have a tsunami? I know I'm supposed to run uphill.
I'm sure, Rita, you can make it.
I'm going to make it, believe me. But what would happen to Lucinda Millen and those tenants?
I was going to say something, but it might not be appropriate for me to say here. Good, very, very good question. Well, a couple of things. One, we have the 911 system, which is our focal point for any emergency. So the first thing that the citizens of this territory will hear once we get the warning from the Tsunami Warning Center that we are expecting, and sometimes you'll get a no notice. So you can be in your bed at 2 o'clock in the morning and it happens. So those events, earthquakes and tsunami, those are no event warning notice. But in the event that we do have a little bit of time, the first thing that you'll hear is those sirens that are placed along the waterfront. We started with the coastal area first, and then we continue. There are going to be an additional 10 sirens that's going to be installed before the year out inland. So that's the first thing you hear. You'll hear that siren. If you hear, well, again, if you're in your bed and you have an earthquake and it's a continuous tremor for any extended period of time, that gives you an indication that you need to run. Don't wait for any warning, because perhaps there might not be any. The next thing that we're doing within the next couple of weeks, we're coming out to each of the respective communities. We have completed what we call our evacuation maps. We'll tell you exactly where the symbol points are and exactly where to run and where the highest point is within the respective neighborhood. One of the things that I do when we go out to communities, again, we're advising families and individuals. First is to take a look at where you actually live. Look for the highest point within your work area, within your residential area, and that's where you want to go if something were to occur. So the evacuation plan, we're planning for 80 feet, which I think is 16 meters high, and we're actually planning for 2 miles in. And all of our planning scenarios that we're doing is based on our historical knowledge of what occurred here in the territory back in November of 1867. That is the best data that we have. That is the worst, for all practical purposes, that's the worst disaster that this territory or this region have experienced. So all of our planning scenarios and everything is surrounded that 1867. So in another couple of weeks, you'll hear a lot more information in terms of the maps. I have ordered almost over 2,000 maps where all the schools, faith-based organization, communities will get those maps, and we'll come out and explain the maps to you. But the bottom line is don't wait for a warning. Find the highest point around your residence or your work area, and the last thing I normally say is you run like hell. So that's pretty much uphill.
Question: what if you can't hear the signal? What do you do then? How do you know that there's a tsunami warning?
Again, that's a very good question, and the only thing I could advise at this point is you look to your left, look to your right, and if everybody's running in some direction, that's where you want to go. You want to follow them.
Or wouldn't also the VI alert system, if she had that on her phone, it might be that way?
And that is correct. And again, that is no guarantee either, because again, most of these events are no notice. So it can happen without, but that's an indication too that we will, if we have that time and that ability, that we'll put that out and VI alert.
Was there, I think this lady has the next question.
Hello, good afternoon to the panel. This is for the lady that's representing education. This is a question that I asked in our Voices.com last year, but I'm happy that I get the opportunity to ask it again to the right person. Our Head Start and preschools are all-inclusive, and within their all-inclusive setup, we have mandated if we have 6 students, it's 1 teacher or assistant teacher. And for each additional 6 to 7 students, you have an additional person in the room. If we're going to be doing inclusive in our government schools from kindergarten to 6th grade, would it be practice also to have an extra body other than the paraprofessional? Because sometimes these children need an extra hand in helping them. So that is my question.
All right, that works 2 ways. One of the things that we're trying to do to be able to be on the front end is have a special education teacher in the classroom with the gen ed teachers. But there are some cases whereby the children are more independent and they do not require as much intervention as others. So it kind of is based on how the children are performing in the classroom, and that kind of controls and dictates the level of assistance that we provide to them. So sometimes it's a paraprofessional in the classroom, sometimes it's a special education teacher in the classroom, but the children are usually, they're our guide as to who specifically, which body stands in that classroom with the gen ed teacher.
There's another question.
Good afternoon. My name is Carmen L. Samuel from Vocational Rehab. My question is for Director Lewis. you mentioned, well, one of my questions was going to ask, what about if you can't hear? And you said, well, you know, you're all in the process of that. Another thing is, I work at Department of Human Services, and I know you all are testing the sirens off. We don't hear it inside it. Many of us are on the computers working. What about a suggestion of locking the computer, shut it down, a flashing warning comes up, especially those that are deaf, that can't hear, that there's a siren going on, they don't know what's going on. What about a signal, something like that? Just a suggestion.
Again, Carmen, thank you very much for that question. I'm gonna make a note of it, and I'll have to take it back to the technician and bring this up as a suggestions, and hopefully I can pass that information on. And these are the kind of things that we would like. Any comments, any suggestions, any recommendations anyone may have that we can improve our processes, please provide that, and that's one of them I'll take back. And most notably, I'll talk to Director Malloy for the Bureau of Information Technology and see if that's something that is workable. Thank you.
This question is for Commissioner Finch. It was brought to my attention about a hour or two ago that Project Strive is going to close. Is there any truth to this?
It is not going to close, but we have to reduce days as part of our budget cuts. So we're still working on the final details of that, and we're going to meet with the Project Strive seniors to talk to them directly.
Okay, this question is once again from Ms. Turner. Ms. Turner, with the budget that we're talking about, I'm still wondering if there's any way that the Department of Public Works could have traffic lights or at least walking signals to indicate when we could walk or don't walk on the crosswalk. Also for those that's impaired by vision, okay, we should have a speaker box by the walker, by the sign, so that it will speak to them and tell them they could walk or cannot walk. Is there any way that this could be done, especially by the hospitals, which is very, very important, because that's where we have the disabled, the elderly, and the schools for our students. I'm very concerned about this.
Thank you for your question again, Mr. Olive. Your question about the speakers, we don't have anything like that currently in the territory. That's something that we would have to look into. I think it's a great suggestion because we have a lot of, like you said, our local population, the school population, as well as a lot of the tourists that come here. And we currently have cross signals, and like you said, those address visual aids, but it does not address the hearing impairment. So that is a great suggestion that I will take back to my commissioner. The second question that you had with regards to putting in lights, because just like Mr. Richardson, I just recently relocated here about 6 years ago, and I am used to in the States, in the school zones where they have the flashing lights overhead, especially when school is out, and that's something that we would have to partner with probably education to get those implemented, because we would have to partner with them to get that. But I think that's also a great suggestion that I have seen implemented already.
I just want to let you know that when I was living down Island, I was in charge of that. They did not have no sidewalks, they did not have no traffic or at least a signal for the students. I took care of that, and that was done. I just want to let you know. So I would like this to be done here in Vernon. I feel it's very important for the students, the seniors, and the disabled.
Yes? Go back closer to your mouth.
Is there jobs? Who gives jobs to the disabled? Where can the disabled find a job? Because I'm waiting for a job, and the work area is closed. And folk rehab is playing smart. And I'm waiting to face the God, and the rest of my leg are shot and I lazy, I don't want to work. And I don't know what to do. I just want to shut my mouth, but I'm not going back in face the God for them to run me. You gotta run them back, trust me, it's in my hand. Please, I would like a job. I'm a professional secretary for National Park Service. I went to Gateway Jobs Corps, graduated first. I'm trying to get my RN, and the psychiatrist has stopped me from studying. I want to finish my RN. And your job, please. Thank you.
You're welcome. Your name I didn't get, but I'll just try to.
My name is Bernice Joseph.
Oh, okay, Miss Joseph. My name is Era Lockhart, and I'm representing the Department of Labor. I'm not sure if you've ever visited us, whether or not you've registered, but if you'd like for me to provide you with the address of our location, I'd be happy to do so, and I can give you that after the session this afternoon.
Next I'm going to this is 96, they wouldn't give me a job. So 1996, I came from New York. The psychiatrist had to send me home. I'm going to labor and they wouldn't give me a job. I have nothing to hide.
Okay, I think we can talk about this separately and apart, but just keep in mind, and for the benefit of everyone else, we do not give jobs. We help connect you with vacant employment opportunities. But I'd be happy to speak with you following this afternoon session.
Okay. And one just, since you have Ms. Turner representing the Department of Public Works, we did have a transportation summit with regard to the issues for persons with seniors and disabilities. It's probably before your time. There needs to be a follow-up because we do have Community Transportation Association gave out a report and recommendations, and since that time there has been no follow-up with regard to the provision of more increasing the transportation services in the Virgin Islands. So if you can take that message back, that will at least help, again, bring some of the same people here. We're at that transportation summit to continue that conversation and look for ways to address the expanding need for transportation services in the Virgin Islands. Thank you. One last question, or that's about it?
Can I just make one quick comment? When he talked about the lights, even right now, just crossing the street, I'm supposed to be an able-bodied person. I just had knee surgery a year ago, and when I walk across the street from Venice Plaza, from the waterfront, across the street, the timing is too short. The time is just too short. I mean, I think it needs to be like 30 seconds, and I'm looking at it, it's only like 10 or 12 seconds.
Rosemary, you sure we're not getting older?
I know.
Time getting shorter for me too. I'd like to thank the panelists. One more, Ms. Brownlow.
Ms. Turner, just a question. I noticed it appears that the lights at Mandela Circle are under repair. It appears that way. Are they going to reactivate the audio signals? They're not working now. They haven't been working for years now at Mandela. Lucinda Millen and the Haven Grant auditory signals are working, but the one at Mandela isn't. Do you know if they're going to be corrected?
The lights at Mandela Circle, actually, I just spoke with the people yesterday. The lights that are there are not working out. The ones that, are you talking about right in front of Wendy's? Is that what you're talking about? Yes, those are not active because as the road is set up right now, that road that's coming from Frenchman Bay is a continuous road. That intersection is not as it's supposed to be. Once we finish the construction that we're doing right now in front of Haven site, those 2 lanes, then that intersection will be activated where it'll be a functioning intersection with crosswalks. But as it is right now, the bags that you see there that are torn away from the signals actually should cover them up, because the way that it is right now, those crosswalks are not supposed to be active. If that makes sense, until.
My question is, before you started a major construction, you did the Mandela Circle, there were auditory lights there. Yeah. They're not working now because they started, but I noticed that they seem to be coming to an end, because I see the bags are exposed just today. So my question is about the auditory lights, not the crosswalks, it's not like the regular lights, but the auditory signals so that the lights will be.
That's exactly what I'm saying. Those bags are not supposed to expose those auditory lights because the intersection is not completed. Once that intersection is completed, those barricades that are there are supposed to be removed. People are supposed to be able to cross. Right now, if you cross from where, say for instance, where the gas station is, going across the street to where Yacht Haven Grand is, you will never be in the right because that traffic flowing from Frenchman Bay is on a continuous green. So once Frenchman Bay is completed, then that signal light at Wendy's will make those people stop. So I'm just saying all of those signals that are there right now are not, they're on, but they're not functional, if that makes sense. But they will once that phase of the construction is completed.
Okay. I like to think, one more? Okay.
Yeah, one more. I'm going to ask the panel, this is to the panel and anyone here that could give me this answer, okay? As I stated, I'm an engineer technician. I've made research up in here at the library. My question is this: why are we not using the sunlight? We are blessed by the sun. Why are we not using the garbage to do recycling so that we could solve this problem with water? This is my big question. This is going to solve a lot of the budget problem that we're facing right now.
Okay. Someone would take a stab at that one?
I would.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Mr. Lee. Darren Richardson, representing the Housing Finance Authority. The director of the authority, Ms. Adrian Williams, when we look at developing affordable housing, we are taking into account the natural sun and ways to reduce the cost of our housing in our area. One of the things that we're doing, and if you look at some of our projects, we're including the solar panels for not only water heating, but we're also looking at solar panels to provide net metering, which is basically giving you credit toward your water bill for the energy that you produce through the panels. One of the other things that we're doing in the home is using low flow faucets and for watering facilities. The other thing we're doing is allowing for, and we're looking into right now, the use of a gray water system because it's amazing that I was on the mainland and they came up with this brilliant idea of reusing the rinse water from your laundry to use for watering or something. And I go, well, that's what my mother used to do. You know, you use the rinse water for the next wash for the clothes. So that's one thing we're looking at. That way it'll help to recycle what we can recycle and utilize what we have in the community. And the sunlight especially. Because we're blessed with a lot of sun.
One last question from Mr. Carty.
Yeah, just a question, a comment in reference to the lady from education and also backing up what Dr. Francis said, Mrs. Francis. You know, it seems like we have quite a few better resources in reference to the students with disabilities, but there are teachers there and there are paraprofessionals, but it appears that we don't use the resources and the talents of those individuals, and also like what our guest speaker, the attorney, said about using pair students. So we ignore a lot of resources and then say we can't help people with disabilities because of money. We have resources, but we don't use our imagination. I presume because we are still operating on the 1733 concept that we are not supposed to think because we're black, but I think if we could pass that and use resources rather than just getting hung up on money. Because I have observed students who are non-sighted who no one talked to within the school, and it doesn't take money for that, so I'm just sharing that with you, and you can share that with other people. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Is it okay if I respond? Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you for your comment and such. And what we have the Department of Special Education. It's more than just money for us, and for myself, working with the wonderful group of people that I'm working with right now. It's not so much an issue of funding. It's just a paradigm shift. And, it's working with the team that we have to be able to shift, one way of thinking to another way of thinking, and that's where we are right now. So I just really encourage you to please give us a chance, give us some time to work through some of the blocks that we have right now. There won't always be blocks, there won't always be things in our way, but we're working through it, and we'll get there. It will get better than it is now, and that I do promise.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Lewis, you got one other comment?
This is our closing.
Well, we can do the closing.
I'll wait till the closing.
Okay. We don't start off the closing, Mr. Finch?
Okay, good afternoon again. Thank you again just for inviting me. Since there were several questions about senior citizens, I just want to mention something that as a community, when you look at the census for the last 20 years, you look at the 1990, the 2000, and the 2010 census, the overall population of the Virgin Islands really hasn't changed. It's pretty much the same number of people, a couple thousand more. But when you look at how many are senior citizens or age 65 and older, that has really jumped. As a community, we have gotten much older. But what we have not done is we have not adjusted any of our resources towards seniors. If you look at what programs that are offered to senior citizens, it's pretty much the same programs that were there in 1990 when there were fewer than half the number of seniors that we have now. And that's going to be a difficult switch because there's really not new money these days. So to make the switch in programs, somebody has to lose and somebody has to gain to move the money over. But the money has not followed the population. And I can tell you, Human Services, we feel this very, very acutely because daily we are receiving the calls from people who need nursing homes, the calls from people who need Meals on Wheels, the calls from people who need homemakers in their house. And when those numbers are growing every day, but your dollars are shrinking and going in the opposite direction, it leads to a very difficult time. So I think at some point, and hopefully some point very soon, as a community, we're going to have to address the fact that we've gotten much older and we have to move resources into that. That is because there's a high prevalence of disabilities among the senior population that I think would be of a lot of interest to everyone in this audience. And I'll just close with the comment, and I think I'm speaking for everybody up here as well. All of us have gone through, and everybody in the room has gone through some very difficult years financially for the last 6 or 7 years, really since the resources started. I think all of us have wonderful plans and wonderful programs and wonderful expansions that are sitting there on our desks, that are on the table, that are ready to do if we ever have the resources. And it's painful to go in the opposite direction, to be having to, instead of cut services rather than increase services. One of the reasons I talked earlier about the fact that we're expanding Medicaid is because that's an open door where we can. So where we can, we are. But I know that all of us have to deal with the reality of hiring freezes and budget cuts and just having less. But it doesn't take away anyone's passion or anyone's commitment. We're all just knowing that better days will come eventually, and we're going to be ready for when they come. So thank you. God bless.
Thank you. Ms. Griffith?
With regards to the Department of Education and the Division of Special Education, what we are charged with is leading the paradigm shift. Okay, getting to a place where our children are included in the general education environment, and that we are at a place where we focus on what our children can do and not focus so much on what they cannot do or have challenges with doing. So I think if we take that and we put that in front of us, there definitely will be a time and a place that will be better than where we are now. Not to say that we're in the pits or anything, but we will come to a place that we are better than where we are now. And so on behalf of the Division of Special Education, on behalf of the Department of Education and our Acting Commissioner, Donna Gregory, I really, really thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to have been here today, to be able to converse with you, and I hope that we can do it again sometime. If you have any questions, queries, anything with regards to special education and the services that we provide to our school-age population, to early childhood education and school-age population on a whole. Our offices are in the Frosco building, and you can come in and ask for Cheryl Serrano Griffith. That would be me, and I will be able to address whatever additional questions or queries you may have at that time. Thank you so much.
We are in competition with larger states that are in the same boat, like the territory, fighting for the same resources. Data equals money, and that's what we got to do. We got to make sure that we got the data to support every single program that we want to see come to fruition here in the Virgin Islands. And if you don't, you're going to be overlooked. And I think that Ms. Lockhart is going to express the same thing. We need the data. We need to categorize all of this disability and come up with some very strong data. We are fighting this same fight with our veterans here in the territory. They complain, they bellyache, but we ask them to come in to register so we can increase our numbers, so we can go forth and present our argument to the authorities, and it's for naught. So I am asking the leadership of this organization, and that some way, somehow, we need to collect the data in the entire territory, because strength is going to help us move forward, and strength means, in some instances, money. But if we don't have the data to support any of our arguments, it's for naught. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Mr. Richards.
Good afternoon once again. On behalf of the Virgin Islands Housing Finance Authority, I would like to thank the organizers for inviting us to be part of this panel. One thing that we believe in at the authority, and it comes from the director, Adrian Williams, down, is that everybody deserves decent, safe, and sanitary housing. That is one thing that we carry as a mantra at the authority. In saying that, I want to make sure that everybody knows that our doors are open. Like we say, not everybody who has a disability is in a place where they can't afford housing. So please be aware of some of the programs that we have. You can call the office of the Virgin Islands Housing Finance Authority, 340-777-4432, or visit our website if you have access to the internet at vihfa.gov. One of the things that we also provide is we have low rental availability at the house for affordable rentals. So we do have means to take homes and remodel them for accessibility. So please, if that's something that needed, either we can help or direct you to where you can find some help. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Lockhart.
Thank you. I'd just like to close by reiterating what I said earlier. It's always a pleasure to join the university as they host the annual Voices That Count event. I believe Commissioner Finch said earlier that there are times when he thinks our respective roles should be reversed. But I had the opportunity, even though I am a panelist, to have heard from many of you regarding concerns. I sincerely apologize for any non-productive experience any of you may have encountered while seeking employment through the department, but don't give up. There's always hope. I'll be happy to continue to support the efforts of the University Center for Excellence in Developmental Disabilities, and I'll be calling on many of you, including some of the panelists here today, to support and make contributions, provide resources and information on your programs and services to the Virgin Islands Disability Stakeholders Panel. It was my pleasure to be here.
Thank you, Ms. Lockhart. Ms. Turner.
Good afternoon. I am the last one, so I'm going to be very brief. I also, too, would like to thank this organization for inviting the Department of Public Works to not only for us to provide you with information, but I have also been able to garner information from you guys that we'll be able to take back to our department. I never make promises and say that, you know, you'll see some, I'll give a timeline, because of course everything that our department that we do depends a lot on funding. But I definitely, where we can meet the need, we definitely will take every initiative to meet that need. If anyone has any questions beyond today for the Department of Public Works, our phone number is area code 340-776-4844. Unlike the other agencies, the Department of Public Works is always flooded with suggestions and questions and inquiries and requests. But where, like I said, wherever we can, we will. We do actually go out and do our best with the community, despite whatever the conditions are. So I'd like to thank everyone, and it was a pleasure.
Let's give a big round of applause to all the panelists. I think they did an excellent job. And perhaps as a takeaway, I think we restate what Mr. Elton Lewis says. For us service providers, if we don't get a grip on the data, nothing else won't matter. So I think we need to take that, because seriously, I've gone to too many conferences in the States where we go down the data list and Virgin Islands is zero. Traumatic brain injury, housing. I've been to health conferences listing, you know, traumatic brain injury. I had 2 or 3 on my caseload myself, not other people in the agency, on my own caseload. And to see that at in Maryland at where is they have the Naval Academy at? But it's a shame that we can't get the information from the last census. So somehow we all have to get together and make a plea, lobby somebody in D.C. to get this data to us.
Put all of our data money together in one line.
They cut that out the last question.
Everybody has a little bit.
Yeah. But again, I think it was a good question and answer session. I again invite you to make sure you set your mark for next year as well for the Voices That Count. It's going to be a woozy. I don't know if we'll have as many people running as we did the last time. But again, I think these forums are very good. Exchange with the not only the politicians, but the persons who actually implement the laws, and this, like we have in the panel today. And again, let's give them a big round of hand. Get them up here to answer your questions. And that's to close out with Dr. Atkins for final words.
And another round of applause for our moderator, Attorney Jennings.
I really want to thank Archie. Archie has been always cooperative, working with us. So give him another one. When I look at the panel, I think these are individuals that have been dealing with issues of disability. Commissioner Finch, Lockhart, Lewis, and all, Mr. Richardson and the young lady from Turner. I just met them now. But these are the individuals, and I want to say it loud and clear: if change doesn't come during these people, it will never come. So these are the individuals that will bring, and I really want to thank them. I want to thank all of you who came. I want to thank our keynote speaker, Ms. Haben Gilman. Thank you very much, and I look forward to see you next year. Have a good evening.